Hello all and welcome back to another wonderful video. Today I want to take a look at the current MLP fandom and what Gen 5 will be like for it. What will it do to it? How will Gen 5 affect it? Will it become better or worse as a result of it? And really I just want to overall talk about that and my feelings and thoughts about how Gen 5 might actually be a really good thing for the community and might actually be much bigger than Gen 4 was. Now I want to clarify right away that I don't think that Gen 5 is going to be, longer than Gen 4. Honestly, I expect it to be a little bit shorter than Gen 4 for reasons that I might get into here in a little bit. But I also want to start off the video by discussing the hatred and the unnecessary hatred, really, that is piled up on Gen 5 for absolutely no reason. There's so many people that already hate Gen 5, people that have seen like the first two screenshots that were leaked or were given or whatever, and just decided immediately after that they hate Gen 5 and that they're not going to watch even a single bit of it. They're not going to watch the movie, they're not going to watch the series that comes after, nothing. These are people that loved Gen 4 so much that they can't accept the fact that Gen 4 is over. Now, some of these people have fair reasons to dislike Gen 5, but given that, Gen 5 hasn't even started yet, we haven't seen the movie, it is coming soon, and we are getting more and more bits of information as time goes on. But given that, Gen 5 isn't out yet, that if you already have Netflix, it doesn't cost you anything, there's not a whole lot to really risk besides your time and things like that when it comes to watching this movie. If you like the movie, you're gonna love the series, because the series is gonna be even better than the movie, because the series is technically gonna have a longer time to tell a story, because there is that small chance that we're gonna have a more overarching story this time around versus what Gen 4 had. Now, that hasn't been confirmed. I don't even think that's been leaked or anything like that, but I do have a very strong hunch that Gen 5 is going to have more overarching stories than what Gen 4 had. If you take a look at Gen 4, they had a little bit of overarching plots and things like that here and there, and these overarching storylines actually got bigger and more complicated as the series went on. Towards the later final seasons, we had this huge overarching plot of Cozy Glow sneaking around doing this thing. Even with the final season, the entire final season had this overarching plot where every now and again we got to see an episode dedicated to it. I feel like we're going to get a lot more of stuff like that in this time around, because they started doing that stuff later on in Gen 4, so maybe Gen 5 is going to do that. If I can take a step back here and kind of look at how the fandom was way back early on, I can't really say firsthand how the fandom was back when Gen 4 was first around, but when Gen 4 was being created, there really wasn't a brony community. Now, there probably was, but it was probably very small. But the adults that loved the kids shows just was completely unexpected for Gen 4. The people that made it and everything like that, they just kind of didn't really expect it to get that big based off of, bronies and adults and everything like that. Nowadays, it's very well known that there's bronies everywhere, that there's adults that love this kids show and kids that love this kids show, of course, as well. And so now they have this massive audience of both kids and adults, and they know that they have this audience of both kids and adults, and they have every chance to use that knowledge to make something very good. Other animated shows appeal to kids and adults, and I think it's pretty fair that, My Little Pony is going to take a look at that and be like, hey, we have these stories that are like this, let's try to do something like that, as well as doing their own thing, of course. And we actually have, basically confirmation that this is what they're going to do. It's obviously not confirmation, but it's very much implied that that's going to be the case, because if we actually look at some of the things that the creators have talked about before, they're keeping Generation 4 in mind. This is technically a continuation of Generation 4. Now, granted, it takes place a very long time after Gen 4, but they're keeping it in mind. They want to use that rich world of lore and history and all that stuff. And that's essentially telling the fandom that, hey, we know that there's adults watching, and we want those adults watching this one too, because they grew up with it. So, and terms of writing and direction, I really think the fandom will enjoy what comes out. Now, depending on how long Gen 5 lasts, we're going to get all kinds of crazy games, and that's also going to, you know, really empower the fandom, so to speak. There's going to be all kinds of games, such as Ambient White, which is an MLP-inspired game with ponies and everything like that. It looks very interesting and great. That's supposed to come out in a few years, I think 2025 or something like that. We're going to be like halfway through Generation 5, if not like somewhere near the beginning or end of Gen 5 by the time this comes out, because we don't know how long Gen 5 is going to last or how long it's going to take or anything like that, but I have a strong feeling it's going to be there for a few years. So we're going to have games like Ambient White come out around the time that Gen 5 is at its peak, probably. We're going to have stuff like Ponytown completely changed forever. Ponytown's going to look nothing like what it does now by the time Generation 5 even starts properly. Like when the series comes out, Ponytown's going to look way different. Not to mention the fact that halfway through Gen 5's life cycle, Ponytown's going to look even more different because it's going to have even more features and ideas and everything flowing through it. It's going to be a very good time for the fandom in terms of gaming and everything like that, because we're going to have all kinds of awesome indie games that, you know, there's so many people working on so many great things that can't be finished until Gen 5 is out. And technically, you could argue that that's Gen 4 stuff, but at the same time, these games like Ambient White and Lords of Ponykeep or Ponytown, they don't really pull, like, basically copies from, you know, what Generation 4 was like. It's obviously inspired by MOP and things like that, but it's its own thing, and it's going to come out around Gen 5's life cycle, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that messes with the fandom, how that affects the fandom and things like that. And I think it's going to affect it positively because now the fandom has more things to do. And it's not just games that we really have to look forward to from the fandom with Generation 5. Since Pip is a singer-songwriter, or most likely a songwriter, and is one of the main characters, you can expect to see a lot of new music based on her music, as well as just music in the show. Like, there's going to be a lot of music and song that Pip sings throughout the series and in the movie and things like that. And that's going to inspire a lot of people outside of the show, people in real life, people that are in the fandom to make music based on her music. All kinds of remixes are going to come out, and that's going to be exciting. There's going to be all kinds of music inspired by that character, inspired by this other character, and so on and so on. It's also very likely that her character inspires other people to be their own music creators. So people that aren't like Prince whatever, you know, those people, you know, they're going to be making music regardless, but because of Pip's character potentially inspiring people to be their own musicians, it's very likely we could see the next big Prince whatever or Violet Pony or the next big Eurobeat Pony or whatever else, what have you. My hunch is that the music is going to be bigger and better than it ever was during Gen 4. It's going to be bigger and better here now in Gen 5 because of Pip. Not because of Pip's character and like her songs obviously are going to be better or whatever like that. But I think it's just going to be better because obviously Gen 4 had a lot of music. People like Prince whatever, Violet Pony, Eurobeat Brony, they made all kinds of music and stuff like that. They have all of that experience from Generation 4 that they're going to be carrying over to Gen 5 when they make more music for Gen 5, if they do. And then not just that, obviously there's going to be all those new music creators that are inspired by Pip and things like that. So I think we're going to get a lot of awesome music this time around because it just feels like music is going to be a big part of the show, and as well it's going to inspire a lot of people. But it's obviously not just Pip either that's going to inspire people and things like that. There's characters like Izzy who seem very, very creative, and I think her character will also inspire lots of new artists and creators and things like that. I think it's going to positively affect the fandom because she's a very creative character, and that's going to inspire a lot of people to be like her, and thus create art and things like that. Now, Izzy already has most of the fan art of any of the characters so far from what I've seen, so it's clear that she's already inspiring lots of artists, so any one of them can end up being huge in the fandom and inspire creation overall. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't look at when they look at like, oh, Gen 5 is going to be terrible. But it's not just Gen 5, it's also the fandom. The fandom is going to make Gen 5 better, and the show is going to make, you know, the fandom better. It's going to be the fandom really that makes it greater. But the show itself is going to lean on the fandom and push them a lot, push them positively a lot. They might push them negatively sometimes, but I feel like they're going to be pushed a lot in Generation 5. The fandom is going to be much bigger here in Generation 5 because there's all kinds of things that are happening outside, like in the fandom right now, that's not going to be finished until halfway through Gen 5 or partway through Gen 5, you know, and that's going to make Gen 5 all that much more exciting because all this other pony stuff is going to be happening. God forbid they do all kinds of references and information and lore-wise stuff like what Gen 4 did, because that's going to make it even better, because now there's even more to talk about and more things to discuss. My only concern with this is that Gen 5 could potentially take too much from Gen 4 and not really be able to be its own thing as much. I don't think that will happen, but if it does, I feel like it will hurt the fandom a lot, because it'll just be like Gen 4.5 or Gen 4 Part 2 or something like that. So that's really what I think. I think that, you know, if the fandom is to survive, it's going to possibly be split in two, because there's so many people that love Gen 4 and absolutely despise Gen 5 and don't want to give it a chance. And obviously, when Gen 5 does come out, there's still going to be people that don't like Gen 5 and prefer Gen 4 and things like that. So I feel like the fandom is going to be split in two to some degree. But at the same time, I feel like it's going to become doubled, because Generation 4 is still going to be a big part. Even the people that enjoy Gen 5 and may even prefer Gen 5 over Gen 4, I think it's going to be a thing of where they like both, because I just see that happening. So much of this is speculation. I would really love to hear what you guys all think. This was not very well scripted. I basically just took down some notes and just went wild at talking here, but I do hope that you enjoyed nonetheless. And like I said, let me know what you think. If you enjoyed it, please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all those wonderful things like that. Because when you do those wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself. And I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.